an early diagnosis could have potentially saved my knees and maybe expanded or extended my playing career.
Yeah, absolutely.
I retired at, I think, the age of, how old was I? 24?
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Emily. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How are things down in South Florida?
Good. We've had a lot of good weather this past week, so I'm glad to have sunshine and not rain because sometimes it rains a lot here.
Absolutely. I know we had like a 60-degree day. I think it was last Thursday or something, and people, you would have thought it was summer. People were out in shorts, laying on the grass. I mean, it was because Boston, as soon as it hits over 50, everyone's like, that's it, to the beach.
Yeah, flip-flops and all.
Exactly. And then today it's like 12, feels like -2 with wind chill. I was like, okay. So I'm so glad that you could sit and chat with me today. I really just want to talk about your story and about your experience with PTOA and sort of how you got so interested and passionate in the OA field.
Yeah, well, that's a long story, but to make it, I guess, a little short, I think I shared with you previously that I was a collegiate and professional athlete. In college, my knee pain got really, really bad to the point where it was hindering my playing. But I can remember even just as a youth, my knees hurting a lot, going to a lot of doctors, doctor appointments, specialists, and things like that. And it was just like, oh, it's just growing pains, just
Right.
keep it moving. You're fine. It'll stop eventually, right?
Yeah.
Because I was tall. So I got that a lot. So got to college, obviously better doctors that were kind of like, all right, let's figure out where this pain is coming from, obviously because they want me to perform at a high level. So with that, I got diagnosed with OA early in my college career, in a nutshell, and it ended up resulting in me getting two double knee reconstructions or Fulkerson osteotomies. Most
Wow.
people call it different things, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Fulkerson osteotomies, I'm sure you know what those are. Basically, they took a piece of my tibia, moved it and screwed it back down so my kneecaps would realign better. And it just continued. Then I ended up getting having like just chunks of cartilage coming out of
Right.
the medial side of my knee.
Yeah. Cartilage.
And it just kept deteriorating. And they tried to go in and fix it with allografts and the oats procedure and
Yeah.
all of that good stuff. But it didn't really take really well. It was unsuccessful to a certain extent. Yeah, my doctors were always like, I don't know how you're still doing this. Like
Right.
your
Right.
knees look like an 80-year-old woman and you are still pushing through it.
And
So
you were
yeah.
young, right? I mean, this was
Yeah,
all college. And I mean, how old were you when you really finally got a diagnosis?
early 20s,
Wow.
early 20s. Yep. And I remember my doctor saying like, wow, if someone would have just listened to you when you were young, instead of just saying it's growing pains, this probably started a long time ago. So, an early diagnosis could have potentially saved my knees and maybe expanded or extended my playing career.
Yeah, absolutely.
I retired at, I think, the age of, how old was I? 24. Yeah, from pro basketball. Yeah, and that's super young. That's like you're in your prime.
Yeah.
You're supposed to
Oh,
be.
and were you playing in the States or were you playing over in Europe?
I was playing overseas
Okay.
at that point, playing also for the Puerto Rican women's national team.
I can relate to having some type of PTOA. I tore both of my ACLs playing field hockey
Uh-huh.
in high school and college. And, even I went skiing with my partner last weekend. And at one point, I was like, I can feel my knees starting to swell. Like,
Yep. I know that feeling.
And it's like, and it makes you think though. I mean, we're young. I'm in my late 20s and you're probably somewhere between your mid and late 20s. And it's like, we're gonna have to live with this.
I'm a little more than that, but we
close. You know, and when you think about the research, is there's no, you know, really the treatment, there is no treatment. It's keep active, keep a healthy knee. And while all of those things are important, you know, what do we do? How do we stave off progressing osteoarthritis so we can make it to 65 before we need a knee replacement, right? I mean, there is not any good treatment. And so I think that's where my area of research has kind of led me, has been more treatment paradigms, but you're going in sort of a different direction. You're more on the policy side of things. Tell me a little bit about sort of where your passion lies in that.
So this is kind of new for me in the sense of policy. Obviously, I'm very heavily involved with the sports social work realm of things. So my research heavily involves sports social work, athlete well-being. How can we prepare athletes for a life, you know, after sports, avoid identity crisis, and this thing that kind of happens when, you know, I can no longer introduce myself as, hi, I'm Stephanie, the basketball player. Well, then who the heck am I, right? So that's kind of how it all started. And that's super important health, important work, athlete mental health, wellness, and the transition out of the game. But then I started to think about my own experience, you know, with OA, with ending my career, and how there's nothing, no policies in place that really protect athletes. And then so it led me to dig a little further about, you know, chronic illness and chronic injuries and post-traumatic injuries and post-traumatic conditions. And so I was like, wow, you know, I'm in a policy course right now where we have to introduce a health disparity and talk about the policy implications, or what has policy done to help mitigate this for certain populations. And as you know, OA largely affects community of color. So as a person of color, I was interested right away, and I've experienced it personally with OA. So I started looking and I'm like, there really is no policy. There's nothing specific for OA. We you know, there's policies for inflammatory diseases in general, you know, which encompass like rheumatoid arthritis and things like that. But what about OA specifically, and what are we doing to prevent it? Not just, you know, the maintenance side of things, you know, and also that comes with healthcare and the cost of OA and how it's largely affecting people of lower SES or socioeconomic status. And then, you know, what are the policy, how is that just? What are the policy implications for that? And it's just like this circle of, you know, this cycle of things going on where, you know, we need more policy to help protect individuals, not just athletes, but even people that are already diagnosed, and people that, you know, the general population, that we can prevent OA and other, you know, inflammatory diseases like this. So that's kind of how I got started.
I think it's incredible that you've been able to take your life story and really use that energy, what could have been something that could have been life defining in a negative way. You've spun it, and now you're going to get a PhD, and you're going to go and, you know, change what you were missing. So I mean, I think that's inspired.
Thank you so much. That means so much, especially at this stage. You know, I'm preparing to go into qualifying exams and this phase. So that just really just touches my heart. Like, it really gives me that inspiration and that motivation to keep going and to know that, you know, this does matter and it is going to help people.
Like you said, making the research accessible. And if that means taking manuscripts and writing maybe, you know, a white paper about them, or a summary pamphlet, something that says, you know, this is the important information, I think is so important. And that's why, you know, we loved the idea of this vlog. And I think having you on was the perfect, you know, marriage, because it is we want to make this information accessible to everybody.
Right.
That it's not just the scientists and the researchers, but the patients, everybody can get something out of it, which I think is so important. Like you said, we have to bring everybody together.
Yeah, I love it. And again, thank you so much for having me on. Like I said, I'm carving out this new area, bridging my love for like sports, social work, policy, my wanting to advocate for OA. I'm kind of just creating this like thing.
That's how you make change, is when you trailblaze and you do something that hasn't been done before. So, I mean, I think it's scary, but super exciting.
Thank you so much.